So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Rob Walker, who is Vice President of Decision Management and Analytics at Pegasystems. I recently met Rob at PegaWorld 2016 in Las Vegas, their annual customer event. And Rob joins me today to talk about a bit more about some of the fancy stuff that they're doing with their analytics and decision technology.
Hi Rob, can you introduce yourself? Tell me tell me a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, Rob Walker. Within Pega, I'm responsible for our decisioning and analytics space, and sort of really in the area of customer experience and optimizing interactions based on that, in all aspects of that, right? So that's sort of product direction and basically own that business.
Okay, so we're here at PegaWorld, which is I guess my first experience of this amount of razzmatazz, as it were. It's been brilliant. I mean, some of the stories and some of the technology has been fascinating. We've been asking a bunch of people from Pega to get their view on what do they think makes Pega different. What makes you stand out, as it were, from the market. I'd just be interested to get your view on that.
Yeah, I'll give it a little bit of a decisioning scope because you've heard all the other pictures.
Of course.
Yes, but I think the sort of the essence of Pega, if you really distill it to the core, and I think we've heard that in some of the keynotes, it's like what we want to make sure, especially sort of in the customer experience realm, is to allow companies to make better decisions. And then take action on that. Otherwise, it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
Right. So make better decisions and then get it done, or keep the promise. Sort of. So it's the process side with the decisioning side. I think that is a unique combination, especially on one platform. So you don't have to integrate stuff. You can basically come up with what is the next best thing to say to a customer, not just sell, right?
Yeah.
To say, really thinking this is it, and if the customer says yes or well, but I'd like it a little different or whatever it is, we can do the end-to-end process as well.
Okay.
And all of that under business control.
And so, I mean, I'm focused on customer experience, customer service, and how we improve that. I mean, I start from a perspective of I don't like bad service. That's my starting point, and I'm trying to sort of figure out the 1,001 ways that we can kind of nudge people to do things slightly better. Yeah. And so what I'm really interested in understanding is, one is like you talk about the decision and analytics. So what does that kind of mean for the business that wants to be that customer experience or that customer service kind of leader, and what sort of difference does it make to their customers and also to their employees, I guess, as well, because the employees play an important part in all of this.
Yes, although not in all the channels, of course. But yes. But I think what sort of the companies that sort of employ this, not just the technology but also the methodology. It's really about the customer experience to make that completely contextual. So we've been hearing a lot in this conference about making, interactions human again, and that can mean a lot of different things. But one of the things is that, like we're having this discussion, right? I'm listening to you, I'm contextually responding to that, and that's normal. That's not normal in customer service at all. And certainly it's not normal when you don't actually talk to a human.
Yes.
Right? And we're adding that touch, right? So this whole decisioning is about listening that changes the context, and then looking at that context. So the customer said just yes or no or maybe, or is unhappy, or can it be £10 less, right? And we completely redecision contextually. So we may execute 1,000 predictive models, all the AI stuff, apply rules, apply margin, but within like a fraction of a second we would say, that's the new thing that I'm going to talk to you about.
And is that the thing the thing you're talking about, the next best action?
The next best action. It carries a real conversation. It's not like I'm shooting something to you, and if you say no, then actually I don't know what to do. No, I'm going to do the next best action. Okay. So that's the sort of that's part of it. So the next is a really important word in next best action, because we keep doing that during the interact. Whenever anything changes, could be a click, could be a location change, could be something you tell an agent, whatever it is. The context changes. So the relevant thing to do is recalculate, just like having a normal conversation.
And that's done real time, or
it's completely real time. And does
the technology even listen and sort of do the sort of speech kind of analytics, sort of the in terms of if an agent's having a conversation with somebody, the engine, as it were, listening in in real time and and that's factored into the decision?
No, we do not. No,
right. Okay.
No. So we do have a few implementations where there is technology that does that, especially around the sentiment and things like that of the conversation or the keywords. That is what we take on, but we don't really analyze that in real time as well. But it would be a good input to have.
Okay.
So that's one side of the equation. So that is on the customer side, it becomes way more relevant, and that's just in general a better customer experience. But for the when you're selling things, the conversion rates, it's all. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's one brain. It's this always-on brain that you've been hearing about, that it's sitting inside these companies, and the benefits of that are that it's also completely consistent. There is one customer decision authority in those companies. So if you just did something on the web, and we've been listening, we've had a conversation on the web, and either you got your answer or you didn't get your answer, you need to do something else. Now you walk into the branch or contact the contact center. They know all about that, even if that's a second later. If you were actually using another mobile device at the same time, we would know that, right? So completely real time. And the only other thing I wanted to add is to on the other side of the balance, if you talk about employees in the company, I think the way that is really special in the way that Pega does these things is we make it possible, despite all the technology, the big data and the analytics and the decisioning, really difficult stuff, a lot of magic, but the business users can actually just express these strategies and implement them. So they can change, they can look at their competition and make changes, they can deploy it, and it will be live in all of these channels immediately.
So, I mean, it's brilliant. But to bring all this to life, I mean, if I think about my listeners and readers and followers of my blog and stuff, I mean, can you give me a couple of examples of this, how this has helped transform a service operation? This is where they were, this is what they did, and this is kind of what happened, because it brings it to life, as it were. Because otherwise, there's a lot of talk about technology, but actually, it's like we've heard today. It's all about the business outcomes, right? So, do you have a couple of examples of cases that you can describe to us, and we can brings the potential of this to life?
Absolutely. And I think maybe the best way to do that is just briefly look at it from an actual customer perspective, see what that means for that particular customer.
Sure.
And then I can talk about why that actually is very difficult to do for a lot of organizations and how they needed to do their transformation to get that right.
Perfect.
So this is like, for instance, a customer. So assume you're looking for a customer. You're actually a customer of a particular bank, but you are just logging in to the website. You're just browsing for the mortgage or whatever it is. We track all that. We don't know who you are, right? At this point. So we track all that. We're already, based on what you click and don't click, we optimize the next page and say, okay, you're interested in mortgages. At some point, so with the limited data that we have, we will already zoom in and say, well, maybe this is the offer you really like. It could be a bundle of different things, so already pretty clever. Now, at this point, to give you more information, we would ask, for instance, for an email address, so we can actually send it to you. The moment we get the email address, we know actually who you are. Suddenly, we know all of your history, so we can actually finesse it a little bit more.
Because you match that to whether they're a customer or not, and if it's their customer, all the history that goes on from there.
Exactly, and it can be using a cookie or device ID or a million ways, but the email is very simple. But now we know who you are, so we can finesse that a little bit more. We know what your preferred channel is, so we will actually send that over email. The whole thing is complete. We've looked, because it's a mortgage. We've also, because this is this always-on brain, we've been looking at the risk component now that we know who you are, and say, well, actually, for you specifically, this is the best bundle of your mortgage and maybe some home equity loan that you may need, and maybe a credit card that takes into account, knowing that you actually are buying a house with us. Maybe we can be a little bit relaxed about your limits as well. But we also know that when we give that to you, your credit score, is already taken into account. That's the customer experience. So we're not going to make you an offer, and then when you say, okay, you walk into the branch and you say,
it's a conditional thing.
Let's
now
do
you
this.
failed.
Oh, actually,
sorry,
marketing didn't know this. So
joined up thinking. So
that's customer-centric thinking. Right? That's one-to-one. This is one customer at a time. What should we be doing? Now, if you look at it from the company perspective, what needs to happen is that first of all you need to have the appetite and the vision to sort of say, okay, the world is getting, with all these channels, these different devices. Well, we've heard a million times. It's obviously a very complex, dynamic world. So we cannot afford to have like 15 disparate systems that are not talking to each other.
Sure.
They're not leveraging each other's learnings. So we need this single brain. So that's one thing. So that's the technology. So you have the single brain, you have business sort of putting the strategies in. And that's basically, think about that as sort of mind mapping the company's priorities.
Sure.
Right? So it's like a whole hierarchy of sort of things. And then you put that into the brain. So now the brain works in all of these channels. But culturally, and this is actually some of the things I spend a lot of time talking to our customers about, is like suddenly, because it's all about the customer, a lot of people need to talk to each other. And I'm not talking about breaking all of these silos. I'm just talking about simple things like, okay, it used to be the case that if somebody is selling the mortgages, somebody else is selling the credit cards in a bank.
Yeah.
Who gets September? Who gets the September schedule for their campaigns?
Yeah.
Right? That's a ridiculous fight. It's like, it is amusing if it wasn't said.
It's a very real fight.
Yes. What obviously the company should be doing is like, okay, we're looking here at this particular customer. What is the best thing to do for the customer, but also for the bank?
Yeah.
It's not forbidden to look at, it's not charity, so it's not forbidden to look at margins and lifetime value. But don't make it an internal competition. Whether we can try to sell you a mortgage or we can try to sell you a savings product or a credit card. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the cultural change that we.
Well, that's always been it seems to be the thing when people talk about. We've heard a lot of talk about digital transformation and transformation programs, change programs, and things. And we know that the research and the stats and things that most of them don't hit their objectives. And not because of the technology or the processes and the systems, but it's because of the communication and the training and the cooperation and the collaboration, all the sort of the people stuff, the cultural stuff that people don't pay enough attention to.
Absolutely. But and I completely agree with that. The nice thing about this, and it's like, sort of great lucky circumstance, is that this paradigm shift to one-to-one. It's not just like it's nice to do. Right? It's also because it's being polite. I mean, it's just weird if you think about it. All these campaigns and different messages. This is not how we talk.
No.
Right? It's like weird. But I appreciate that. In the 1980s, we didn't have the technology to actually in real time carry a conversation contextually.
Yeah.
But now we have. So there's no real excuse. But apart from sort of the survival needs of companies to actually start doing this, I think it's also we discussed this sort of this human touch. Right? It's about being polite and listen and then contextually react. It's like, I think that is a whole new way of operating. Yeah. And I think forcing a company, and this is what our software does, to have the conversation about, for one customer at a time, what actually are our priorities? Do we want to sell at all cost, or do we think it's, in some cases we want to, they owe us money and we need to collect? Is that more important? Or they have a service issue? Let's make that explicit. Let's not guess, or let's have 15 different systems with different opinions talk to this customer.
Sure.
We explicitly going to mind map what we are as a brand, and that's what we're going to execute in all the channels.
Sure. Well, I mean, that sounds. It sounds perfect. I mean, I guess my question then would be is, you talked about the human touch, and that's music to my ears, because I have this little saying that that sort of describes my approach. Is like, I'm a lover of simplicity and the human touch with a really useful bit of technology thrown in. So that's kind of my approach, and it's always been my approach, because I think the simplicity thing, and this is another message that's been coming on, is like, make things simple, because we go in a complex world, but make things kind of simple. But it's also valuing the human touch, because with all the talk of AI and machine learning and robotics and automation and everything else, I think there's a big worry that actually the human touch gets disaggregated out of the equation, but actually it's becoming almost more important, or just as important. It's about how you work has a symbiotic sort of relation. How do you maximize or optimize all, that relationship?
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing to make interactions human and to get that human touch, you need to understand human behavior. To understand human behavior, you need to analyze data, right? So the AI is not like maybe 10 years ago, it was more like a chess engine, you know, but it's a little bit more sophisticated than that, right? And I think so I'm not sure the human touch always means that we need to be completely, you know, human with warmth and emotion necessarily. It's cool. It's also about...
It's contextual, isn't it?
It's about... Exactly. It's those kind of qualities, right? It is... I am actually contextually, I'm listening, it's immediate, I'm relevant. You know, those are things of the human touch that you just miss if you talk to an IVR and that's not human.
No.
Right? But it doesn't mean that, you know, somebody needs to have like a jolly accent.
No,
necessarily.
not at all. It's about being effective.
Yes.
You know, in the right sort of in the whatever particular sort of situation. You know, and it's got to be effective and make sense for the customer. If somebody just wants to get something done just like that, then it's like going, I don't really want somebody to ask me how my weekend was. I just want to give me the answer, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. But I think that is so. I feel strongly that, like in terms of the customer experience and the human touch, that we shouldn't confuse like human emotions and things like that with what actually, you know, some of the qualities of human conversation.
Sure.
If we can embed that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
That we, you know, from, you know, what you currently see in customer service or customer experience, where things are, you know, they're pre-built. So even if there's a lot of analytics used to say, okay, well, I'm going to, you know, talk to you about this book, but that was last week, right? Yeah. And now or yesterday, I actually bought the book. I don't want to talk about this book. I want about a book about the companion book, or I want to not talk about books at all. I want to talk about something else. Sure. That's what we miss. So it's not like predictive analytics. You know, that makes things relevant. But if it's not real time and contextual, you know, that will still be a very weird conversation.
Yeah, sure. So, couple of just final questions. Where's on the decision and analytics? We see where it's at now. What does the future sort of hold? Is it just more of the same, or is there some other things that are on the horizon? You think these are things that are going to start looming large and featuring large?
Yeah. Let me take that in two different directions of where we're taking this. So one is sort of this is like this always on brain is like an omni-channel kind of thing. Yeah. And I know that's like a buzzword, but really, you know, quite a few of our customers use a lot of, well, it means that all the touch points are centrally orchestrated, you know, using a single brain, and there's a common history and things like that. But also what you learn of how people react on your online property and on the website, you're going to use when they're standing in front of an ATM or when they're using your mobile app, right? Yeah. All of these things are connected. So there is that, I think, really makes a big difference. But one of the frontiers that we actually are crossing, and we announced yesterday, is to take that also to sort of the digital marketing space, right? Because currently that brain that I'm talking about is you know, inside the company, so it can be very clever about all the channels that company owns. But for pay channels, you know, when you're on CNN, your bank is also listening, right? Or your communications company, doesn't really matter. Your insurance company.
Everybody's listening all the time.
Everybody's listening all the time. So if you're listening, then be relevant, right? Not have a completely separate group of people decide what you know, what should be shown if I'm, you know, looking at the travel section at CNN. Yeah. Or when I'm actually talking to a contact center agent, that should be the exact same thing if I know that customer. Yeah. Right. So that, I think, is one thing where we're taking it into digital advertising, paid media, programmatic buying, all of these things that used to be very outside the company, we're now going to connect. So that's a big thing. Okay. And the other thing, sort of more on where it moves from a sort of an AI perspective almost, is like, because we have this always on brain, this centralized decision hub sitting in the middle of the organization, it sees a lot. It sees all the interactions, right? So what it will build up is like, for every single interaction, it will have the data that was available at the time. It will know what recommendation it made to talk about. It will know the customer's response to that and the follow-up. So we have all of that data. And the next step is that we're going to use AI and machine learning stuff to optimize that automatically. Yeah. So and optimize in the sense that, oh, actually, if you took a little bit of budget away here and then put this lever here and then turn this banner green, you know, actually this will help the NPS score in this particular way. So currently, we're a long way towards, so we have the means to sort of achieve those measures. We can also simulate it so you can see if it happens. Next step is to actually use machine learning to optimize these things. So now it starts to sort of run a little bit of your company.
Okay.
But, that's where I think it's going.
Fantastic. Well, though, I think I'm going to leave it with that thought, because that's kind of big enough thought, really. I was going to ask if there was anything else you wanted to add, but I think that's probably enough.
Yeah.
My head's gone.
Rob, thanks very much. That's been great.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for the book.
You're welcome.